The smile on her father-in-law's face should have been warm, but something cold crawled up Sasha's spine as he leaned back in his leather chair, swirling his whiskey. "So, Sasha," Harold said, his gray eyes twinkling with what she now realized wasn't kindness, "how do you like the apartment? Robert said you finally saw it last week." Sasha's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. The Sunday dinner conversation around her seemed to blur into background noise as her mind raced. What apartment? She looked across the dining room at Robert, who had gone completely pale, his fork suspended over his plate of roast beef. Their eyes met for a split second before he quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in his mother's story about the neighbor's cat. "I'm sorry, what apartment?" Sasha asked, trying to keep her voice steady even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. She set down her cup with deliberate care, the small clink against the saucer sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet that had fallen over the table. Harold's smile faltered slightly. "The one on 5th Street, dear. Robert said you'd been asking about it for months." He glanced at his son, confusion creeping into his expression. "Didn't you take her to see it last Tuesday?" Robert's mother, Patricia, stopped mid-sentence about the cat and looked between them with growing interest. Sasha felt like she was watching a car accident in slow motion, unable to look away from the disaster unfolding before her. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sasha said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to Robert, who was now fidgeting with his napkin, avoiding her gaze entirely. "Robert, what apartment is your father talking about?" The silence stretched between them like a rubber band about to snap. Robert's younger sister Emma looked up from her phone, finally sensing the tension that had descended on the room like a heavy blanket. Even the grandmother, who usually dozed through these family dinners, had opened her eyes and was watching the scene unfold with sharp attention. "It's nothing," Robert finally mumbled, his voice strained. "Dad's just confused about something." But Harold wasn't backing down. "Confused? Son, you called me last week asking about the spare keys. Said Sasha wanted to see the place before you?" He stopped abruptly, his face going red as he seemed to realize he'd said too much. Sasha felt the world tilt sideways. "Before I what?" she asked, standing up so quickly her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "Robert, what is going on?" Robert's hands were shaking now as he reached for his water glass. "Sasha, please, can we talk about this later? At home?" "No." The word came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't care. "I want to know right now. What apartment? What keys? And why does your father know about something that I apparently don't?" Patricia cleared her throat delicately. "Perhaps we should let the young people work this out in private," she suggested, but her eyes were gleaming with curiosity rather than concern. Sasha had been married to Robert for 3 years, and she thought she knew him completely. They'd met at a marketing conference in Chicago, where she'd been presenting her latest campaign for a major beauty brand. He'd been charming, successful, and everything she thought she wanted in a husband. He worked in finance, made good money, and seemed to adore her. They'd bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, talked about having children, and she'd felt like her life was finally falling into place. But now, standing in his family's dining room, she realized she might not know him at all. "The apartment on 5th Street, she said slowly, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed starting to form in her mind. "You mean the one downtown? Near the coffee shop where you said you sometimes work late?" Robert's face went from pale to green. "Sasha, I can explain. You work late at an apartment?" She felt like she was speaking underwater, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. "Robert, we live 20 minutes from your office. Why would you need an apartment downtown?" Emma had put down her phone entirely now, sensing drama better than any teenager. The grandmother was leaning forward in her chair, not wanting to miss a word. Harold was staring at his son with what looked like disappointment, and Patricia was watching Sasha with an expression that was hard to read. "It's just a place to stay when I work really late," Robert said weakly. "You know how traffic can be, and sometimes I have early meetings." "For 2 years." Harold interrupted, looking confused. "Son, you've been paying for that place for 2 years. That's hardly, sometimes." 2 years. Sasha felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. 2 years of working late. 2 years of early meetings. 2 years of coming home with explanations that had seemed perfectly reasonable at the time. "You've been paying for an apartment for 2 years and never told me?" she asked, her voice getting stronger as anger began to replace shock. "Where did you think I thought that money was going?" Robert stood up abruptly, knocking over his water glass. The liquid spread across the white tablecloth, but nobody moved to clean it up. "It's not what you think," he said desperately. "I was going to tell you, The timing never seemed right. The timing never seemed right to tell your wife you have a secret apartment? Sasha's voice was rising now and she didn't care who heard. What exactly about maintaining a secret residence for 2 years requires perfect timing? She looked around the table at Robert's family, and suddenly everything clicked into place. The way Patricia sometimes stopped talking when Sasha entered a room. The way Harold asked pointed questions about Robert's schedule. The way Emma always seemed to know things about Robert's life that Sasha didn't. They all knew. They all knew about the apartment and probably about whatever Robert was using it for. You all knew, she said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. You all knew he had this apartment, and nobody thought to mention it to his wife. Patricia had the grace to look ashamed, but Harold was still focused on Robert. Son, I thought you said you told her. I thought she knew about. Dad, please, Robert interrupted, his voice cracking. Just, please stop talking. But it was too late. The damage was done and Sasha could see it in all their faces. They knew something she didn't, something big enough to keep secret for 2 years. Something that required an apartment downtown and regular payments and spare keys. I'm leaving, she said quietly, grabbing her purse from the back of her chair. Robert, I'll be at home when you're ready to tell me the truth. All of it. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor in the silence that followed her announcement. Behind her, she could hear Robert's chair scraping as he stood up, probably to follow her, but she didn't slow down. Sasha, wait, he called after her, but she was already at the front door, pulling it open to the cool October air. She didn't wait. She walked to her car, got in, and drove away, leaving Robert standing in his parents' doorway looking like a man whose world was about to fall apart. Because hers already had. As she drove home through the familiar streets of their neighborhood, Sasha's mind raced with questions. What was the apartment for? Why had Robert kept it secret? And why did his family know about it when she didn't? The questions swirled around in her head like a tornado, destroying everything she thought she knew about her marriage. She pulled into their driveway and sat in her car for a long moment, staring at the house they'd bought together. It was a beautiful house, with a red front door and flower boxes under the windows. They'd painted the bedroom together, laughing as they got more paint on themselves than on the walls. She'd planted the rose bushes in the front yard, and Robert had built the wooden bench where they sometimes sat in the evenings planning their future. But now, looking at it, she wondered how much of that future had been built on lies. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. I'm coming home. Please don't leave. I can explain everything. Sasha stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. She got out of her car and walked up to the front door, her key trembling slightly as she unlocked it. Inside, the house felt different somehow, like it belonged to strangers. She walked through the living room, past the photos of their wedding day and their honeymoon in Italy. She paused at the mantelpiece, looking at a picture of them at last year's Christmas party, both of them smiling and happy. Had he been lying then too? Had the apartment already existed, already been part of their life that she knew nothing about? In the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat at the counter, waiting. Robert would come home soon and he would try to explain. He would probably have a story ready, something that would make the apartment seem innocent and reasonable. But Sasha knew, deep in her bones, that whatever he told her would be just the beginning of a much bigger truth. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence, marking the minutes until her marriage would either be saved or destroyed forever. And for the first time in 3 years, Sasha wasn't sure which outcome she was hoping for. Robert came home an hour later, his face drawn and pale. Sasha heard his key in the lock, heard him hesitate in the entryway, probably gathering courage for the conversation he knew was coming. She stayed where she was, sitting at the kitchen counter with her wine, waiting. Sasha? His voice was tentative, almost scared. She'd never heard him sound like that before. In here, she called back, surprised by how calm she sounded. He appeared in the doorway, still wearing his dress shirt and tie from dinner, but everything about him looked disheveled. His hair was messed up like he'd been running his hands through it, and his tie was loosened. He looked like a man about to confess to a crime. I can explain, he said immediately, the words tumbling out in a rush. The apartment, it's not what you think. I mean, it is what you think, but it's not. It's complicated. Sasha took a sip of her wine, studying his face. Complicated how? Robert pulled out the chair across from her and sat down heavily. I got it 2 years ago because I was working on some sensitive projects. My boss suggested I might need a place to work privately, away from the office. You know how it is in finance, sometimes you need complete confidentiality. It was a reasonable explanation. Too reasonable. The kind of explanation someone would prepare in advance. What kind of sensitive projects? She asked. Mergers and acquisitions. High-level stuff. I couldn't bring the work home because of confidentiality agreements, and the office wasn't private enough. He was looking directly at her now, his brown eyes earnest and pleading. I know I should have told you, but I signed so many non-disclosure agreements, I wasn't sure what I was allowed to say. Sasha nodded slowly. And you've been paying for this apartment for 2 years? The company reimburses me for it. Well, most of it. It's considered a business expense. Most of it. Robert shifted uncomfortably. I pay a small portion out of pocket. Maybe $200 a month. It's not much. $200 a month for 2 years. Nearly $5,000 she hadn't known about. Not a fortune, but not nothing either. Can I see it? She asked. See what? The apartment. If it's just a workspace, I'd like to see where my husband spends his evenings. Robert's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, worry, calculation. I don't think that's a good idea. There are confidential documents there, and my boss is really strict about who can access the space. I'm your wife. I know, but these corporate policies, they're really strict. I could get in trouble. Sasha felt something cold settle in her stomach. Robert, are you telling me that your job is more important than your wife's peace of mind? No, of course not. Can you trust me on this? I know it looks bad, but I promise it's exactly what I said it is. Trust. The word hung in the air between them like a challenge. 3 years of marriage, and he was asking her to trust him about something he'd hidden from her for 2 years. Something his family knew about, but she didn't. Okay, she said finally. I'll trust you. Relief flooded Robert's face. Thank you. I know this is weird, but I promise there's nothing suspicious about it. I just should have told you sooner. You're right. You should have. They sat in silence for a moment, the tension in the room still thick despite Robert's explanation. Sasha finished her wine, watching her husband's face. He looked relieved, but there was something else there too. Something that looked like guilt. I'm tired, she said finally. I think I'll go to bed. Okay. I'll be up in a minute. But when Sasha woke up at 2 in the morning, Robert wasn't in bed beside her. She lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house. She could hear him downstairs, moving around quietly, probably trying not to wake her. She heard the front door open and close, heard his car start in the driveway. Where was he going at 2 in the morning? She got up and looked out the bedroom window, but his car was already gone. The street was empty, lit only by the streetlights and the moon. She stood there for a long time, looking out at the darkness, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake by trusting him. When she woke up in the morning, Robert was beside her, sleeping peacefully. She had no idea when he'd come home. Over the next few days, Sasha found herself watching Robert more carefully. She noticed things she'd never paid attention to before. The way he always kept his phone face down on the table. The way he stepped outside to take certain calls. The way he did laundry himself, insisting he didn't want to burden her with his work clothes. She started paying attention to their bank statements, something she'd never done before. Robert had always handled their finances and she trusted him completely. But now she looked at every transaction, every withdrawal, every payment. She found the monthly charge for the apartment, $400, not $200 like he'd said. She found payments to restaurants she'd never been to, charges for things she couldn't identify. On Thursday, she was folding laundry when she found a key in Robert's jacket pocket. It was a simple silver key, not like the ornate brass keys to their house. She held it in her palm, staring at it. Could be anything, a key to his office, a key to a friend's house, a key to a storage unit. But somehow she knew it was the key to the apartment. She put the key back where she found it, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, she lay awake while Robert slept beside her, the knowledge of the key burning in her mind like a secret she couldn't tell. On Friday, Robert came home from work with flowers, a dozen red roses, her favorite. He'd never brought her flowers on a random Friday before. What's the occasion? She asked, taking the roses from him. No occasion. I just wanted to show you how much I love you. He kissed her forehead and she smelled cologne she didn't recognize. I know things have been weird since Sunday, and I want you to know that you're the most important thing in my life. The flowers were beautiful, but they felt like an apology for something she didn't know about yet. That weekend, Robert was attentive and affectionate. He made her breakfast, suggested they go for a walk in the park, cuddled with her on the couch while they watched a movie. It should have been wonderful, but Sasha felt like she was watching a performance. Everything felt slightly off, like Robert was trying too hard to be the perfect husband. On Sunday, he said he had to go into the office for a few hours. Just some catching up, he explained. I'll be back by dinner time. After he left, Sasha sat in their living room, staring at the roses he'd brought her. They were starting to wilt around the edges, the petals turning brown. She got up and threw them away, then immediately felt guilty. They were just flowers. But they felt like evidence of something she couldn't name. That night, she lay in bed listening to Robert's breathing, wondering if the man sleeping beside her was the same man she'd married. She thought about the apartment, about the key, about the cologne she didn't recognize. She thought about his family's faces at dinner, about the way they'd all known something she didn't. And for the first time in 3 years of marriage, Sasha wondered if she really knew her husband at all. The next morning she made a decision. She was going to find out what was really going on, no matter what it cost her. She was going to follow that key wherever it led, even if it led to the destruction of everything she thought she knew about her life. Because living with questions was worse than living with answers, no matter how painful those answers might be. Sasha called in sick to work on Monday, something she'd never done unless she was actually ill. Her boss, Janet, was understanding. Sasha had been one of their top marketing executives for 5 years and rarely took time off. She just said she needed a personal day, which was technically true. After Robert left for work, Sasha sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the business card she'd printed from the internet. Downtown apartments, 5th Street location. She'd found it by searching for rental properties in the area Robert's father had mentioned. There were only 3 buildings on 5th Street that rented apartments, and one of them matched the address she'd seen on their bank statement. She drove downtown, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The traffic was light since it was mid-morning, and she found herself taking a longer route than necessary, putting off the moment when she'd have to face whatever she might find. The building was modern and expensive looking, with a glass front and a doorman. Sasha parked across the street and sat in her car watching people come and go. Young professionals, mostly the kind of people who could afford to live in the heart of the city. She wondered which apartment was Robert's, what it looked like, what he did there during all those late nights. After an hour of sitting and watching, she got out of her car and walked to the building. The doorman was friendly, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "Good morning," she said, trying to sound casual. "I'm looking for my husband. Robert Johnson in apartment 4B. The doorman smiled. "Oh, Mr. Johnson. He's not in right now, but his friend was just here about an hour ago. Should I let her know you stopped by?" Friend. The words hit Sasha like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. "Her? Miss Rivera. She's here most mornings. Sweet girl, always brings me coffee." He gestured toward a coffee shop across the street. She just went to get her usual order. Sasha followed his gesture and saw a woman walking out of the coffee shop, carrying 2 cups. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair and a figure that belonged on magazine covers. She was wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Sasha's monthly car payment. "Actually," Sasha said quickly, "I think I'll wait for her upstairs. Could you let me up to 4B? The doorman hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't let anyone up without Mr. Johnson's permission. Building policy." "I'm his wife," Sasha said, pulling out her driver's license. "Sasha Johnson. See?" The doorman looked at her ID, then back at her face, confusion clear in his expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but Mr. Johnson has never mentioned a wife. Are you sure you have the right building?" "Never mentioned a wife." The words echoed in Sasha's head as she walked back to her car. She got in and sat there, watching as the young woman, Miss Rivera, entered the building. The doorman greeted her warmly, like he'd known her for years. 2 coffee cups. She'd bought 2 coffee cups. Sasha's phone rang, making her jump. It was Robert. "Hey honey," he said, his voice warm and affectionate. "How are you feeling? Are you still sick?" "I'm fine," she managed. "Just needed a day to rest." "Good. I was worried about you. Listen, I'm going to be working late tonight. That big project I mentioned? We're in crunch time." "At the office?" "Yeah, the office. Might not be home until after midnight. Don't wait up for me." Sasha looked up at the building, counting floors until she found what she thought was the 4th floor. "Okay. I'll see you when you get home." "Love you," Robert said. "Love you too," she replied automatically, but the words felt like lies in her mouth. After Robert hung up, Sasha sat in her car for another hour, watching the building. She saw Miss Rivera leave once, carrying a bag of groceries, and return 20 minutes later. She saw other residents come and go, all of them greeting the doorman like old friends. She saw a delivery person bring flowers to the building, expensive-looking flowers that reminded her of the roses Robert had brought her. At lunchtime she drove home, her mind reeling. She sat in her kitchen staring at the phone trying to decide what to do next. She could confront Robert directly, but he'd already lied to her once. She could hire a private investigator, but that felt like admitting her marriage was over. She could try to find out more about Miss Rivera, but she didn't even know her first name. Instead, she did something she'd never done before. She went upstairs to Robert's home office and started looking through his things. The office was neat and organized like everything else about Robert. His desk was clean, his files were labeled, his computer was password protected. But in the bottom drawer of his desk, underneath a stack of old tax returns, she found a folder labeled Personal. Inside the folder were receipts. Receipts for restaurants she'd never been to, receipts for jewelry she'd never seen, receipts for weekend trips she'd never taken. The dates went back 2 years, exactly as long as he'd been renting the apartment. One receipt made her hands shake. It was from a jewelry store downtown, dated 6 months ago. The amount was $1,500, for a necklace described as white gold with sapphire pendant. Robert had never given her a sapphire necklace. She'd never even mentioned liking sapphires. There were hotel receipts too for places in the city and in nearby towns. Weekend getaways that Robert had supposedly spent working. She remembered those weekends, how he'd come home tired and stressed, complaining about demanding clients and impossible deadlines. She'd felt sorry for him, had tried to make his life easier by taking care of everything at home. The folder also contained photographs, printed on regular paper like someone had printed them at home. They were pictures of Robert and the young woman from the coffee shop, the one the doorman had called Miss Rivera. In the photos they were holding hands, kissing, looking at each other with the kind of expression Sasha remembered from the early days of her relationship with Robert. In one photo the young woman was wearing the sapphire necklace. Sasha sat in Robert's chair holding the photographs, feeling like her world was dissolving around her. 2 years. For 2 years her husband had been living a double life, maintaining a relationship with another woman, buying her gifts, taking her on trips, while Sasha stayed home like a faithful wife, never suspecting anything. She looked at the photographs again, studying the young woman's face. She was beautiful, but more than that, she looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy, the way people look when they're in love. The way Sasha had looked on her wedding day. She put the photographs back in the folder and closed the drawer. She sat in the quiet office, listening to the house settle around her. This was her house, the house she'd helped buy, the house she'd turned into a home. But apparently Robert had another home now, another life, another woman who made him happy. That evening she cooked dinner as usual, set the table for 2 even though she knew Robert wouldn't be home. She ate alone, the empty chair across from her a reminder of how many meals she'd eaten alone while Robert was with his other woman. At 11 o'clock she went to bed. At midnight she heard Robert's car in the driveway. She lay still, pretending to be asleep as he crept into the house and up the stairs. He moved quietly, trying not to wake her, probably thinking he was being considerate. When he slipped into bed beside her, she could smell perfume on his clothes. Not her perfume, something floral and expensive that belonged to someone else. "How was work?" she whispered, even though she knew he thought she was asleep. "Long," he whispered back. "Go back to sleep, honey." But Sasha couldn't sleep. She lay awake in the darkness, listening to Robert's breathing, thinking about the photographs in his desk drawer. She thought about Miss Rivera, about the sapphire necklace, about all the lies Robert had told her over the past 2 years. And she started planning. The next morning, Sasha drove back to the building on 5th Street. This time she had a plan. She'd spent the sleepless night thinking about what she'd discovered, and she'd decided she needed to know everything before she made any decisions about her marriage. She parked in the same spot as before and waited. At 10:30, just like the previous day, Miss Rivera emerged from the building and walked toward the coffee shop. Sasha got out of her car and followed her. The coffee shop was busy with the morning rush, but Sasha managed to get in line behind the young woman. Up close, she was even more beautiful than she'd appeared from a distance. Her skin was flawless, her hair was shiny and perfectly styled, and her clothes were expensive and well-fitted. She looked like someone who was used to being taken care of. "The usual?" the barista asked when Miss Rivera reached the counter. "Yes, please. 2 large coffees, 1 black, 1 with cream and sugar. And 2 of those blueberry muffins." Sasha's heart sank. Robert's coffee order was black, no cream, no sugar. She'd been making his coffee for 3 years. While Miss Rivera waited for her order, Sasha pretended to study the menu board. She listened as the young woman chatted with the barista about the weather, about a movie she'd seen, about plans for the weekend. She sounded happy, carefree, like someone whose biggest worry was choosing between muffin flavors. When Miss Rivera's order was ready, she paid with a credit card. Sasha saw the name on the card, Isabella Rivera. Bella. The name suited her, beautiful, exotic, everything that Sasha felt like she wasn't. Sasha ordered her own coffee and followed Bella back to the building. She watched as the doorman greeted her warmly, as she disappeared into the elevator with her coffee and muffins. 2 coffees, 2 muffins. A cozy breakfast for 2. Instead of going home, Sasha drove to the public library. She spent 2 hours on the computer, searching for information about Isabella Rivera. Social media made it easy to find people, and Bella had profiles on every platform. Her Instagram was full of photos, selfies, pictures of food, pictures of beautiful places. And scattered throughout, photos with a man whose face was carefully cropped out of frame, but whose hands, clothes and partial profile were unmistakably Robert's. The photos told a story. Bella at a restaurant, sharing dessert with mysterious male hands. Bella at a concert, leaning against a man's shoulder. Bella on a beach somewhere, her hand intertwined with someone else's. The captions were coy, best weekend ever, love my life, grateful for everything. Sasha scrolled through 2 years of photos, watching her husband's secret relationship unfold in carefully cropped images. She saw the sapphire necklace in several photos, always with captions like spoiled and so lucky. She saw clothes and jewelry that matched the receipts she'd found in Robert's desk. But what hurt most were the photos of Bella in places Sasha recognized. The restaurant where she and Robert had celebrated their anniversary, but Bella had been there with him just weeks later. The hiking trail where Robert had proposed, but Bella had posted a photo from the same spot with the caption, "Perfect day with my favorite person." Even their favorite weekend getaway, the bed and breakfast where they'd gone for their first anniversary, Bella had been there too in a photo tag just 6 months ago. Robert wasn't just cheating on her. He was recreating their entire relationship with another woman. The worst part was how happy Bella looked. In every photo she was glowing, radiant, completely in love. She looked the way Sasha had felt during the early days of her marriage, when she thought she was the luckiest woman in the world to have found someone like Robert. Sasha printed out several of the photos, paying for them with shaking hands. She drove home in a daze, feeling like she was living someone else's life. How had she been so blind? How had she missed all the signs? That afternoon she called her best friend Lisa, who lived in another state but had been her college roommate and closest confidant for 15 years. "I need to ask you something," Sasha said without preamble when Lisa answered. "Did you ever think Robert was cheating on me?" There was a long pause. "Sasha, what's going on? Are you okay? Just answer the question. Did you ever suspect anything?" Another pause. "There were a few times when I wondered. Remember when you called me about that business trip he took to Miami? You said he was working the whole time, but when I looked at his company's website, they didn't have any clients in Miami." Sasha remembered. Robert had been gone for a week, supposedly meeting with potential clients. He'd come back with a tan and stories about boring meetings and terrible hotel food. She'd been jealous that he got to go to Miami while she stayed home with her regular routine. "And there was that time at your birthday party," Lisa continued. "He kept stepping outside to take phone calls, and when I asked him about it he got really defensive. Said it was work stuff, but it was like 10 o'clock at night. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I thought I was being paranoid. And because you seemed so happy. I didn't want to ruin that if I was wrong." But she hadn't been wrong. None of them had been wrong. Everyone had seen the signs except Sasha, who had been too trusting, too in love, too willing to believe the best of her husband. "Sasha, what's happening? Are you okay?" "I found out about the other woman," Sasha said quietly. "Her name is Bella. They've been together for 2 years. "Oh, Sasha. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out everything first. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions." After she hung up with Lisa, Sasha sat in her kitchen, staring at the photos she'd printed. In one of them, Bella was wearing a red dress that Sasha had never seen before. But she recognized the background. It was the Italian restaurant where she and Robert had their first date. The restaurant where he'd told her he was falling in love with her. She picked up her phone and called the restaurant. "Hi," she said when the hostess answered. "I'm trying to reach someone who might have eaten there recently. Her name is Isabella Rivera? She would have been with a man probably last weekend?" "Oh, Bella. Yes, she and Robert were here Saturday night. They come in regularly. Are you a friend of theirs?" "Something like that," Sasha managed. "They come in regularly?" "Every few weeks for the past year or so. They always sit at table 12, it's Robert's favorite spot. He says it's where he had his first date with someone special. Sasha hung up without saying goodbye. Table 12. That was their table, the table where Robert had first told her he loved her. Now it was his table with Bella, the place where he probably told her the same lies. She drove back to the building on 5th Street, but this time she didn't just watch from her car. She walked into the lobby and approached the doorman. "Hi," she said, trying to sound casual. "I'm Robert Johnson's wife. I was here yesterday asking about him." The doorman looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I told you yesterday." "I know. But I need to ask you something important. How long have you known Robert?" "About 2 years since he moved in. But listen, I really can't." "And Miss Rivera? How long have you known her?" The doorman shifted uncomfortably. "About the same time." "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything." "You're not in the middle of anything. I just need to understand. Do they live together? In the apartment?" The doorman looked around the lobby, making sure they were alone. "Ma'am, I don't know what's going on, but Mr. Johnson introduced Miss Rivera as his girlfriend when they first moved in. I had no idea he was married to anyone else." "Girlfriend. Not wife, not mistress, not affair. Girlfriend. Like Sasha didn't exist." "They moved in together?" "Yes, ma'am. She's there most nights. Sometimes she's there when he's not, sometimes he's there when she's not, but they definitely live together." Sasha felt like she was going to be sick. "Thank you," she whispered and walked out of the building. She sat in her car, trying to process what she'd learned. Robert wasn't just having an affair. He was living a completely separate life. He had another home, another relationship, another version of himself that had nothing to do with her. She drove home and went straight to Robert's office. This time she didn't just look through his desk, she searched everything. In his closet she found clothes she'd never seen before, expensive shirts and ties that weren't part of his regular wardrobe. In his briefcase she found receipts for couples therapy sessions with someone named Dr. Martinez. Couples therapy. Robert and Bella were in couples therapy together, working on their relationship while Sasha sat at home thinking her marriage was fine. She called Dr. Martinez's office. "I need to schedule an appointment," she said. "My name is Isabella Rivera, and I've been seeing Dr. Martinez with my boyfriend Robert Johnson." "Of course, Miss Rivera. Would you like to schedule a joint session or individual?" "Joint, please." "When is our next regular appointment?" "You're scheduled for Thursday at 3 p.m. just like every week. Did you need to reschedule?" "No, Thursday is fine." "Thank you." Thursday at 3 p.m. That was tomorrow. Every week, Robert left work early on Thursday, telling Sasha he had a standing meeting with an important client. Instead, he was going to therapy with his girlfriend, probably talking about their future together. That night, Robert came home at his usual time, flowers in his hand again. This time they were lilies and he was smiling like he'd had a wonderful day. "How are you feeling, honey?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "You look tired." "I'm fine," she said, taking the flowers. "How was your day?" "Good. Really good. I had a breakthrough on that project I've been working on. I think everything is finally falling into place." "That's wonderful," Sasha said, putting the flowers in water. "What kind of breakthrough?" "Just some complicated financial stuff. You wouldn't be interested." He loosened his tie, looking relaxed and happy. "What do you want to do for dinner?" "I already ate," she lied. "I wasn't feeling well, so I had some soup earlier." "Are you sure you're okay? You've been off lately." "I'm fine. Just tired." Robert studied her face and for a moment, Sasha wondered if he could see the truth in her eyes. But then he smiled and kissed her forehead. "Why don't you go to bed early? I'll clean up down here." "Okay. Good night." "Good night, honey. I love you." "I love you too," she said automatically, but the words felt like ashes in her mouth. She went upstairs and got ready for bed, but she didn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to Robert move around downstairs. She heard him talking on the phone, his voice too low for her to make out the words, but she could hear the tone, warm, affectionate, intimate. He was talking to Bella, probably telling her about his day, about the flowers he'd brought his wife to keep her from getting suspicious. Maybe they were making plans for their therapy session tomorrow, or for their weekend together, or for their future. When Robert finally came to bed, Sasha pretended to be asleep. He slipped in beside her, and she could smell Bella's perfume on his clothes again. He'd probably stopped by the apartment after work, spent time with her before coming home to play the role of devoted husband. "Good night, Sasha," he whispered in the dark. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because she was finally starting to understand that the man lying beside her wasn't her husband at all. He was a stranger who had been playing a role for 2 years, and she had been too trusting to see it. But now she saw everything. And tomorrow she was going to start doing something about it. The next morning, Sasha called in sick to work again. She told Janet she had food poisoning and might need the rest of the week off. Janet was concerned. It wasn't like Sasha to take extended time off, but she was understanding. After Robert left for work, Sasha drove to his parents' house. She needed to know how deep this betrayal went, how many people had been lying to her face for 2 years. Patricia answered the door in her garden clothes, surprised to see Sasha standing on her doorstep. "Sasha dear, what a surprise. Robert didn't mention you were coming over." "He doesn't know I'm here," Sasha said. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." Patricia's expression became guarded. "Of course. Come in, come in. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you." Sasha followed Patricia into the living room, the same room where her world had started falling apart 3 days ago. "I need to ask you about the apartment." Patricia sank into her chair, suddenly looking older than her 65 years. "Sasha, I think you should talk to Robert about this." "I did talk to Robert. He lied to me. Now I'm talking to you. I don't think it's my place." "Patricia, please." Sasha's voice was stronger than she felt. "I know about Bella. I know about the apartment, about the money, about everything. What I don't know is how long you've known." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, studying her hands. "I've known for about a year," she said finally. "Harold has known longer." "A year?" Sasha repeated. "You've known for a year that your son was cheating on me, and you never said anything. It wasn't my place to interfere in your marriage. But it was your place to keep his secrets?" Patricia looked up, her eyes defensive. "Robert is my son. I don't approve of what he's doing, but I can't control his choices." "Did you meet her? Bella?" Another long pause. "Yes. Robert brought her to dinner a few months ago. He said they were working together on a project." "And you believed that?" "I wanted to believe it. But the way he looked at her." Patricia shook her head. "I knew what was really happening." Sasha felt like she was going to be sick. "He brought her here? To your house? Where he brings me?" "Just once." Harold was furious about it. They had a terrible fight. But not furious enough to tell me the truth. Patricia stood up and walked to the window, looking out at her garden. "Sasha, I know you're angry and you have every right to be. But this family has been through enough scandal. Robert's brother went through a messy divorce 5 years ago, and it tore everyone apart. I was hoping Robert would come to his senses and end things with that girl before anyone got hurt." "Before anyone got hurt?" Sasha's voice was rising. "I'm already hurt. I've been hurt for 2 years, I just didn't know it. I know and I'm sorry. But making a scene won't help anyone." "Making a scene?" Sasha stood up, her anger finally breaking through the numbness she'd been feeling. "Your son has been lying to me for 2 years. He's been living with another woman, spending our money on her, taking her to places that were supposed to be special for us. And you think I shouldn't make a scene? I think you should try to work it out. Marriage is hard and sometimes people make mistakes." "This wasn't a mistake," Sasha interrupted. "This was a choice. A choice he made every day for 2 years. A choice your family supported by keeping his secret." Patricia turned back to face her, and Sasha could see tears in her eyes. "I never wanted this to happen. I love you, Sasha. You're like a daughter to me. Then why didn't you protect me like a daughter? Why did you protect him instead?" "Because he's my son." The simple honesty of the statement hit Sasha like a slap. Patricia hadn't lied to her because she didn't care about her. She'd lied because when it came down to choosing between her son and her daughter-in-law, blood had won. "What about Emma?" Sasha asked. "Does she know too?" "Emma knows something is going on, but Robert made us promise not to tell her the details. She's still in college and he didn't want to burden her with his problems." "His problems?" Sasha repeated. "Is that what I am? A problem?" "No, of course not. That's not what I meant." But Sasha could see the truth in Patricia's face. She was a problem, an inconvenience, something that stood in the way of Robert's happiness with Bella. "I need to go," Sasha said, grabbing her purse. "I need to think about all of this." "Sasha, wait." Patricia followed her to the door. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm not going to smile and play the happy wife while everyone around me knows my husband is in love with someone else." She left Patricia standing in the doorway and drove home, her mind racing. She had 2 hours before Robert's therapy appointment with Bella, and she needed to decide what to do with that information. She could show up at the therapy office and confront them both. She could wait at the apartment building and follow them. She could call Robert and tell him she knew everything. But all of those options felt reactive, emotional, like she was letting them control the situation. Instead, she did something that surprised even her. She called a lawyer. "I need to speak to someone about divorce," she said when the receptionist answered at the law firm she'd found online. "My husband is having an affair, and I need to know what my options are. I can schedule you for a consultation tomorrow afternoon. Would 2 p.m. work?" "Yes, that's perfect." She hung up and immediately felt better. She was taking action, making decisions, taking control of her own life instead of just reacting to Robert's lies. At 2:45 p.m., she drove to Dr. Martinez's office. She parked across the street and waited. At exactly 3 p.m., she saw Robert's car pull into the parking lot. A minute later, Bella got out of her own car and met him at the entrance. They walked in together, holding hands, looking like any other couple going to therapy to work on their relationship. Sasha sat in her car, watching the building, trying to imagine what they were talking about in there. Were they discussing their future together? Were they talking about how to handle the inconvenience of Robert's wife? Were they planning when and how to tell her the truth? An hour later they came out together, still holding hands. Robert walked Bella to her car, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive away before getting in his own car and heading in the opposite direction. Heading home to his wife, who was supposed to be sick with food poisoning. Sasha drove home quickly, wanting to be there before Robert arrived. She parked in the garage and went inside, where she quickly changed into pajamas and got into bed. When Robert came home 20 minutes later, she pretended to be asleep. "Hey honey," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she mumbled, keeping her eyes closed. "How was work?" "Long day. That client meeting ran late." The lie came so easily, so naturally, that Sasha wondered how many times he'd practiced it. "I'm sorry you had to work late." "It's okay. I'm just glad you're feeling better." He kissed her forehead and she could smell Bella's perfume on his clothes. "Go back to sleep. I'll make dinner." After he left the room, Sasha lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the lawyer's appointment tomorrow, about the questions she would have to answer, about the life she would have to rebuild. But for the first time in 3 days she felt like she had a plan. She was going to gather all the evidence she could find. She was going to protect herself financially. She was going to find out exactly what Robert and Bella had been planning for their future. And then she was going to destroy them both. Not with violence, not with drama, but with the truth. She was going to expose every lie, every secret, every betrayal. She was going to make sure that everyone who had helped Robert deceive her would face the consequences of their choices. Robert thought he was so smart, maintaining his double life, keeping everyone's secrets. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his wife. The next morning, Sasha woke up early and drove to the bank before Robert left for work. She needed to understand exactly how much money he'd been spending on his other life, and she needed to secure her own financial future before everything fell apart. At the bank, she met with their financial advisor, a kind woman named Mrs. Chin who had helped them set up their accounts when they first got married. "I need to see all of our account statements for the past 2 years, Sasha said. "Both joint and individual accounts." Mrs. Chin looked surprised. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson? Usually Mr. Johnson handles your financial matters." "That's the problem," Sasha said. "I need to understand what's been happening with our money." Mrs. Chun pulled up their accounts on her computer, and Sasha felt her stomach drop as she saw the numbers. Over the past 2 years, Robert had withdrawn over $30,000 from their joint savings account. Small amounts, a few hundred here and there, but it added up to more money than Sasha made in 6 months. "Where did all this money go?" she asked. Mrs. Chun clicked through the transaction history. Most of these withdrawals were made from the ATM at the bank branch downtown. There are also several transfers to an account I don't recognize. "What kind of account?" "It appears to be a personal account in Mr. Johnson's name only. Would you like me to see if I can get more information about it?" "Yes, please." While Mrs. Chin made phone calls, Sasha studied the transaction history. The pattern was clear now that she knew what to look for. Every month, Robert transferred money to his personal account. Every month, there were cash withdrawals from the ATM near Bella's apartment building. Every month, there were charges to restaurants, jewelry stores, clothing boutiques, and travel agencies. He'd been funding his entire relationship with Bella using money from their joint account. Money that was supposed to be for their future, for the house they wanted to buy, for the children they'd talked about having. "Mrs. Johnson?" Mrs. Chin hung up the phone, looking uncomfortable. "I was able to get some information about that account. It's a personal account that Mr. Johnson opened 2 years ago. The balance is currently about $15,000. $15,000? Sasha felt like she was going to be sick. Where did that money come from? It appears to be a combination of transfers from your joint account and deposits from an outside source. I can't tell you more than that without Mr. Johnson's authorization. What about our retirement accounts? Our investment accounts? Mrs. Chen's expression became even more concerned. Let me check those for you. The news got worse. Robert had been borrowing against his 401k, taking out loans that he'd been paying back with money from their joint account. He'd also liquidated some of their investments, claiming they were rebalancing their portfolio. Mrs. Johnson, I have to ask, are you and Mr. Johnson having financial difficulties? Because these patterns suggest some serious money management issues. We're having other kinds of difficulties, Sasha said. I need to open my own account. Something that only I have access to. Of course, I can help you with that right away. Sasha opened a new savings account and transferred half of what remained in their joint account, about $8,000. It wasn't much, but it was something. She also opened a new checking account and had her paycheck direct deposited there instead of the joint account. Is there anything else I can help you with? Mrs. Chen asked. Yes. I need copies of all our account statements for the past 2 years. And I need to know, if we were to divorce, what would happen to our joint debts? Mrs. Chen's expression became sympathetic. I'm sorry to hear you're going through this. You'll need to speak with a lawyer about the specific details, but generally speaking, debts incurred during marriage are considered joint responsibility, even if only one spouse was aware of them. Joint responsibility. Sasha could end up being responsible for paying back the money Robert had spent on his girlfriend. The thought made her furious. After leaving the bank, Sasha drove to her lawyer's appointment. The law firm was in a tall building downtown, with expensive furniture and serious-looking people in suits. She felt intimidated, but she forced herself to walk in and give her name to the receptionist. Mrs. Johnson? Mr. Williams will see you now. Mr. Williams was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. His office was filled with law books and family photos, and he offered her coffee and a comfortable chair. Tell me what's going on, he said simply. Sasha told him everything. About the apartment, about Bella, about the money, about Robert's family's conspiracy of silence. She showed him the bank statements, the photographs she'd printed from social media, the receipts she'd found in Robert's desk. Mr. Williams listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This is a fairly straightforward case of adultery and financial deception, he said finally. The evidence you've gathered is quite comprehensive. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I want a divorce. I want to make sure I'm not responsible for the money he spent on her. And I want him to face consequences for what he's done. The divorce will be straightforward, especially with this evidence. As for the financial issues, we can argue that the money he spent on his extramarital relationship should be considered a dissipation of marital assets, which means he would be responsible for paying it back to you. What about consequences? Can he get in trouble at work for this? Mr. Williams looked uncomfortable. That depends on his employment contract and company policies. Some companies have morality clauses, especially in finance where trust is important. But I can't guarantee anything. What about her? Bella? Can she get in trouble? For what? Having a relationship with a married man isn't illegal. Morally questionable perhaps, but not illegal. Sasha felt deflated. So they can destroy my life, spend my money, lie to me for 2 years, and there are no real consequences? There are consequences, Mr. Williams said gently. Divorce is a consequence. Loss of reputation is a consequence. Having their deception exposed is a consequence. But revenge isn't something the legal system is designed to provide. Then I'll have to provide it myself. Mrs. Johnson, I need to advise you against doing anything that could be considered harassment or intimidation. It could hurt your case in the divorce proceedings. I understand. But I'm not going to just disappear quietly while they live happily ever after on my money. Mr. Williams studied her for a moment. What did you have in mind? I want to make sure everyone knows the truth. His family, his friends, his coworkers, her friends. I want to make sure that everyone who helped them deceive me understands what they were part of. As long as you stick to the truth and don't engage in harassment, you have the right to tell your story. Then that's what I'm going to do. After leaving the lawyer's office, Sasha felt more determined than ever. She had a plan now, a legal strategy, and a clear understanding of what Robert had stolen from her. But she also had something else, a burning desire to make sure that Robert and Bella paid for what they'd done to her. She drove home and went straight to Robert's office. This time she didn't just look through his things, she photographed everything. Every receipt, every photograph, every piece of evidence that documented his double life. Then she sat down at his computer and started guessing passwords. She tried their anniversary date, his birthday, her birthday. Nothing worked. But then she tried Bella's birthday, which she'd found on social media, and the computer unlocked. Robert's email was full of messages from Bella. Love letters, plans for trips, discussions about their future together. Sasha read them all, screenshotting the most damaging ones. One email from 3 months ago made her hands shake. I know this is hard, baby, but you said you'd talk to Sasha about the divorce soon. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending. I want to be able to tell people about us. I want to meet your family properly. I want to start our real life together. Robert's response, I know and I will. I just need to find the right time. She's been so happy lately, and I don't want to hurt her more than necessary. Give me a few more months to figure out the best way to do this. A few more months. He'd been planning to leave her, planning to divorce her, while still taking her money and lying to her face every day. Another email from last month, I found the perfect venue for our wedding. It's expensive, but I know you'll find a way to make it work. You always do. Our wedding. They were planning to get married. They were planning their future together while Sasha lived in ignorance, thinking her marriage was solid. She screenshot everything and sent the images to herself. Then she cleared the browser history and closed the computer, leaving no trace that she'd been there. That evening Robert came home with flowers again. Daisies this time. He was in a good mood, humming as he kissed her hello. How are you feeling, honey? Ready to go back to work tomorrow? Actually, I think I need one more day. I'm still not feeling great. Of course. Take all the time you need. He seemed relieved, probably because it meant he could spend more time with Bella without having to worry about maintaining his schedule. Robert, she said carefully, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? With us, I mean. With our marriage. He looked surprised by the question. Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're not as close as we used to be. Like you're distracted or thinking about something else. I'm just stressed about work. You know how it is. He pulled her into a hug. But I love you. You know that, right? I love you too, she said, but the words felt like poison in her mouth. That night, she lay awake planning her next move. She had all the evidence she needed. She had legal representation. She had her own money secured. Now it was time to start dismantling the life Robert had built on lies. Over the next week, Sasha gathered evidence with the methodical precision of a detective. She took more time off work, telling Janet she was dealing with a family emergency, which was technically true. Every morning after Robert left for work, she would begin her investigation. She hired a private investigator recommended by her lawyer, a professional woman named Detective Torres who specialized in marital cases. Detective Torres was expensive, but she was thorough, and she understood what Sasha was going through. I've seen cases like this before, Detective Torres said during their first meeting. The hardest part for most people is accepting that someone they loved was capable of such elaborate deception. How long do you think this will take? Sasha asked. With the evidence you've already gathered, probably just a few days. I need to document their routines, get photographs of them together, confirm the financial information. But you've done most of the work already. Detective Torres was right. Within 3 days, she had a comprehensive file documenting Robert and Bella's relationship. Photos of them entering and leaving the apartment together. Photos of them at restaurants, shopping, walking hand in hand through the city. Financial records showing exactly where Robert's money was going. But the most damaging evidence came from a source Sasha hadn't expected. Bella's social media accounts. She's been posting about the relationship online, Detective Torres explained, showing Sasha a series of Instagram posts. She's been careful not to show his face, but she's been documenting their entire relationship. Look at this. The post told the story of a 2-year romance. Bella posting about date night at restaurants Sasha recognized. Photos of jewelry and gifts with captions like, "He spoils me so much." Pictures from trips to places Robert had supposedly gone for work. She's been living her relationship publicly while you've been living in ignorance, Detective Torres said. That's going to be very helpful in court. But the most shocking discovery came when Detective Torres ran a background check on Bella. She's not who she appears to be, Detective Torres said, spreading documents across her desk. Isabella Rivera is actually Isabella Martinez. She changed her name 2 years ago, right around the time she started dating your husband. Why would she change her name? Criminal record. She was arrested for fraud 3 years ago for running a romance scam. She would target wealthy men, convince them to support her financially, then disappear with their money. Sasha felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Robert is being scammed? It's possible. Or it's possible she genuinely fell for him and decided to go legitimate. But either way, your husband is involved with someone who has a history of financial deception. Does he know about her past? That's hard to say. But if he doesn't, he's about to find out. Sasha took copies of all the evidence home and spread it across her dining room table. Photos, bank statements, email printouts, social media posts, background checks. It was overwhelming. 2 years of lies, documented in excruciating detail. She also made another discovery that week. While going through Robert's things more carefully, she found a receipt from a jewelry store dated just 2 weeks ago. A receipt for an engagement ring worth $8,000. $8,000. Nearly all of what remained in their joint account. Robert was planning to propose to Bella. That night, Sasha sat at her kitchen table, staring at the engagement ring receipt. She thought about the past 3 years of her marriage, about all the times Robert had told her he loved her, about all the plans they'd made together. Had any of it been real? Or had she been living with a stranger the entire time? Her phone rang. It was Lisa calling for their weekly check-in. "How are you holding up?" Lisa asked. "I found out he's going to propose to her," Sasha said without preamble. "What? When?" "Soon, I think. He bought a ring 2 weeks ago. $8,000. Nearly everything we had left in savings." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Sasha, you need to get out of there. This is beyond cheating. This is cruel." "I know. I'm filing for divorce next week." "Good. You deserve so much better than this." After hanging up with Lisa, Sasha made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for Robert to propose to Bella. She wasn't going to let him have his perfect moment with another woman using money he'd stolen from their marriage. She was going to end this on her own terms. The next morning, she called Robert at work. "Hi, honey," he said, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I was just wondering if you wanted to have dinner tonight. Somewhere nice. I feel like we haven't had a proper date in a while." "That sounds great. Where did you have in mind?" "That Italian place where we had our first date. Table 12 if it's available." "Perfect. I'll make a reservation for 7 o'clock. "I love you," she said, and for the first time in weeks she meant it. She loved the man she'd married, the man she'd thought Robert was. She was saying goodbye to that man, to the life they'd planned together, to the future she'd thought they would have. "I love you too," Robert said. "See you tonight." But Robert wouldn't see her tonight. At least not the way he expected. Sasha spent the afternoon getting ready. She got her hair done, bought a new dress, had her nails done. She wanted to look beautiful for what might be the last dinner she'd ever have with her husband. She also made some phone calls. She called Robert's boss, a man named Mr. Peterson whom she'd met at several company events. "Hi, Mr. Peterson, this is Sasha Johnson, Robert's wife. I'm calling because I need to report some concerns about Robert's conduct." "Mrs. Johnson? What kind of concerns?" "Financial impropriety. He's been using company resources for personal matters, and I have documentation if you're interested." "That's a serious allegation. Can you come in tomorrow to discuss this?" "Yes, I'll be there." She called Patricia next. "Patricia, it's Sasha. I wanted to let you know that I'm filing for divorce." "Oh, Sasha. Are you sure that's what you want to do?" "I'm sure. I also wanted to let you know that I'll be sending some information to your friends and neighbors. I think they should know what kind of man they've been socializing with." "Sasha, please don't do anything rash." "It's not rash. It's justice." She hung up and made one more call, to the therapy office where Robert and Bella had been going. "Hi, this is Sasha Johnson. I need to speak with Dr. Martinez about my husband Robert Johnson and his girlfriend Isabella Rivera. I'm sorry, but I can't discuss patients. I'm not asking you to discuss them. I'm asking you to listen. Dr. Martinez has been providing therapy to my husband and his mistress while I was unaware of their relationship. I think he should know that one of his patients has been lying to him about their situation." "Ma'am, I really can't. Isabella Rivera is actually Isabella Martinez, and she has a criminal record for fraud. I thought Dr. Martinez should know that before he continues treating her." She hung up and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked beautiful, composed, ready for what was coming. Tonight, she would have dinner with Robert at their special table. She would let him lie to her one more time, let him pretend to be the loving husband he'd never really been. And then tomorrow she would destroy the life he'd built on her pain. Sasha arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and asked to be seated at table 12. The hostess remembered her from previous visits and greeted her warmly. "Mr. Johnson not here yet?" "He'll be here soon," Sasha said, accepting the menu she already knew by heart. She ordered a glass of wine and sat back in her chair, watching the door. The restaurant was busy, filled with couples enjoying romantic dinners, business associates closing deals, friends catching up over pasta and wine. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that someone at table 12 was about to blow up her entire world. Robert arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, looking handsome in a dark suit and tie. He kissed her cheek and sat down across from her, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. "You look beautiful," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I'm glad we're doing this." "Me too," Sasha said, letting him hold her hand even though his touch now felt like ice against her skin. "It feels like we haven't connected in a while." "I know. Work has been crazy lately. But things should calm down soon." The waiter came to take their order, and Robert chose the same wine they'd had on their first date. He was being romantic, attentive, the perfect husband. If Sasha hadn't known the truth, she would have fallen in love with him all over again. "So," Robert said after the waiter left, "what made you want to come here tonight?" "I've been thinking about our relationship lately. About our future." "Oh? What about it?" Sasha took a sip of her wine, studying Robert's face. "I've been wondering if we want the same things. If we're on the same page about where we're heading." "Of course we are. We've talked about this before. We want the house, the kids, the whole suburban dream." "Do we? Because sometimes I feel like you're somewhere else. Like your mind is on other things." Robert's expression flickered for just a moment, so quickly that Sasha almost missed it. "I told you it's just work stress. Once this project is finished, things will be different." "What project is that exactly?" "You know, the merger I've been working on. The one with all the confidentiality requirements. The one that requires you to work late 3 nights a week? The one that requires a secret apartment downtown." Robert went very still. "Sasha, what are you getting at?" "I'm getting at the truth, Robert. The truth about Isabella Martinez, also known as Bella Rivera. The truth about apartment 4B on 5th Street. The truth about where you've been spending our money for the past 2 years." The color drained from Robert's face. I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because I have photographs. I have bank statements. I have emails. I have enough evidence to bury you in divorce court." Robert looked around the restaurant, probably checking to see if anyone was listening. "Sasha, please, let's not do this here." "Why not? This is our table, isn't it? The place where you first told me you loved me? Of course, you've told Bella the same thing here, haven't you? Same table, same lies, different woman." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." Sasha pulled out her phone and showed him one of the photos Detective Torres had taken. "This is you and Bella leaving your apartment 3 days ago. You're holding hands. You look very much like a couple." Robert stared at the photo, his face going from pale to gray. "How long have you known?" "I started figuring it out last Sunday when your father asked about the apartment. But I've known everything for about a week now." "Sasha, I can explain." "No, you can't. There's no explanation for 2 years of lies. There's no explanation for stealing our money to support another woman. There's no explanation for living a double life while your wife sat at home thinking her marriage was fine." The waiter approached with their appetizers, but stopped when he saw the tension at the table. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Sasha said with a smile. "My husband was just telling me about his girlfriend." The waiter looked confused and hurried away. Robert buried his face in his hands. "Please don't do this," he said quietly. "Please don't make a scene." "A scene? You mean like the scene you've been acting out for 2 years? The scene where you're the devoted husband while secretly planning to leave me for another woman? I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? Were you ever going to tell me, or were you just going to disappear one day?" Robert was quiet for a long moment. "I was going to ask for a divorce. So, I was trying to find the right way to do it." "The right way?" "The right way would have been 2 years ago, before you started stealing from our joint account. Before you moved in with another woman. Before you took her to places that were supposed to be special for us." "I know you're angry." "Angry?" Sasha's voice was getting louder, and she didn't care who heard. "I'm not angry, Robert. I'm destroyed. You destroyed me. You took 3 years of my life, 3 years of love and trust and commitment, and you threw it away for a woman with a criminal record who's probably scamming you just like she scammed other men before you. Robert's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Isabella Martinez was arrested for fraud 3 years ago. She runs romance scams on wealthy men. Did you know that when you fell in love with her? Or are you just another mark? That's not true. It's all true. I have the police reports. I have the background check. Your precious Bella is a con artist, and you're her latest victim. Robert was shaking now, his hands trembling as he reached for his water glass. Even if that's true, it doesn't change how I feel about her. How you feel about her? Sasha laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean how you feel about the person she's pretending to be? Just like you've been pretending to be my husband while you planned your future with her? I never stopped loving you. Yes, you did. You stopped loving me the day you decided I wasn't enough for you. You stopped loving me the day you chose to lie to me instead of being honest about what you wanted. The waiter returned, looking nervous. Should I bring your entrees? Just the check, Sasha said. We won't be staying. After the waiter left, Robert leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. Sasha, please. Can we go home and talk about this? Can we try to work this out? Work it out? Robert, you spent $8,000 on an engagement ring for another woman. Our engagement ring cost $3,000. You were willing to spend almost 3 times as much to marry her as you spent to marry me. How do you know about the ring? I know about everything. I know about the couples therapy. I know about the trips you took together. I know about the jewelry, the clothes, the romantic dinners. I know that you've been living a completely separate life and funding it with money you stole from our marriage. The waiter brought the check and Sasha paid it with cash. She stood up and Robert grabbed her wrist. Please don't leave like this. How should I leave? Should I smile and pretend this is all okay? Should I thank you for the wonderful 2 years of lies? I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every day for 2 years you hurt me. Every time you came home from being with her and kissed me hello, you hurt me. Every time you said you loved me while you were planning to leave me, you hurt me. Sasha pulled her wrist free and picked up her purse. I've filed for divorce. My lawyer will contact you next week. I've also reported your financial misconduct to your employer, so you should probably expect a call from HR. Sasha, you can't. I can and I did. I've also sent some interesting information to your family, your friends, and Bella's social media followers. I thought they should know the truth about both of you. Robert's face went completely white. What did you do? I told the truth. I sent them all the evidence I gathered. The photos, the financial records, the background check on Bella. I figured if you were proud enough of your relationship to maintain it for 2 years, you wouldn't mind everyone knowing about it. You'll ruin everything. I'm not ruining anything. You already did that. Sasha slung her purse over her shoulder and looked down at her husband one last time. Goodbye, Robert. I hope she was worth it. She walked out of the restaurant without looking back, leaving Robert sitting alone at table 12, the table where their relationship had begun and where it had finally, officially ended. Outside, Sasha got in her car and drove home through the familiar streets of their neighborhood. She felt strangely calm, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The confrontation was over. The truth was out. Now she could start rebuilding her life. When she got home, she went upstairs and started packing. She wasn't going to stay in the house another night, wasn't going to sleep in the bed she'd shared with a man who'd been lying to her for 2 years. She packed enough clothes for a week and drove to a hotel downtown. As she checked in, her phone started ringing. Robert, probably trying to do damage control, trying to convince her to take back what she'd done. She turned off her phone and went up to her room. Tomorrow the real consequences would begin. Tonight she was just going to sleep peacefully for the first time in 2 years. Sasha woke up in her hotel room to 17 missed calls from Robert and 43 text messages. She deleted them all without reading them and ordered room service for breakfast. She had a busy day ahead of her. Her first stop was Robert's office building. She had an appointment with Mr. Peterson, Robert's boss, to discuss the evidence she'd compiled about Robert's financial misconduct. Mr. Peterson was a stern man in his 60s who took corporate ethics very seriously. He listened carefully as Sasha presented her evidence, his expression growing darker with each document she showed him. This is very serious, he said finally. If Mr. Johnson has been using company credit cards for personal expenses, or if he's been claiming false business expenses, that's grounds for immediate termination. I have receipts showing he claimed business dinners that were actually romantic dates with his girlfriend, Sasha said, sliding a folder across his desk. And here are credit card statements showing he used the company card to pay for a hotel room during a supposed business trip to Miami. Mr. Peterson studied the documents, his jaw tightening. Mrs. Johnson, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We'll be conducting a full investigation starting immediately. What does that mean for Robert? It means he's suspended pending the investigation. If these allegations are proven true, he'll be terminated and we'll pursue legal action to recover any misappropriated funds. Sasha left the office feeling satisfied. Robert's income was about to disappear, which meant his ability to support Bella was about to disappear too. Her next stop was the apartment building on 5th Street. This time she didn't try to get past the doorman. Instead, she waited across the street until she saw Bella leaving the building, then followed her to the coffee shop. Bella was alone this time, probably because Robert was dealing with the crisis Sasha had created. She looked upset, checking her phone constantly, her usual confident demeanor replaced by worry. Sasha approached her table. Isabella Martinez? Bella looked up, confused. I'm sorry, do we know each other? I'm Sasha Johnson, Robert's wife. The coffee cup slipped from Bella's hands, spilling coffee across the small table. Oh my God. We need to talk, Sasha said, sitting down across from her. Bella was even more beautiful up close, but she looked young and scared. I don't know what to say. You could start with the truth. How long have you known Robert was married? From the beginning, Bella whispered. He told me he was getting divorced, that it was just a matter of paperwork. He said you two had grown apart and that you were both ready to move on. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. I was in love. Were you? Or was he just another mark? Bella's face went pale. What do you mean? I know about your past. Isabella Martinez arrested for fraud 3 years ago. How many men have you done this to? That was different. I was desperate, I made mistakes. But with Robert it's real. I love him. Do you? Or do you love his money? Bella was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. You don't understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was supposed to leave after a few months, but then I really fell for him. So this was a scam. At first, yes. But then it became real. I love him and he loves me. He doesn't love you, Sasha said coldly. He loves the fantasy of you. The fantasy of being with someone young and beautiful who makes him feel important. But that's over now. What do you mean? I mean he's about to lose his job. I mean he has no money left to spend on you. I mean everyone in his life now knows exactly what both of you are. Bella's phone started ringing. She looked at the caller ID and showed it to Sasha. It was Robert. Aren't you going to answer it? Sasha asked. Bella shook her head. I can't. Not right now. Why not? Isn't this when he needs you most? When the money runs out and the lies catch up with him? I need time to think. About what? About whether he's still worth your time now that he can't pay for your lifestyle? Bella stood up abruptly. I have to go. Of course you do. Because that's what con artists do when the con falls apart. They disappear. Sasha watched Bella hurry out of the coffee shop, leaving her purse behind in her rush. Inside the purse, Sasha could see a set of keys, probably the keys to Robert's apartment. She took the keys and walked to the apartment building. The doorman recognized her from her previous visits. Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. Are you here to see Mr. Johnson? Actually, I'm here to collect some things. Miss Rivera asked me to get some items from the apartment. She held up the keys. She's not feeling well. The doorman looked confused but didn't stop her as she walked to the elevator. The apartment was exactly what Sasha had expected. Modern, expensive, and decorated like a love nest. There were photos of Robert and Bella everywhere, romantic candles on every surface, and a king-sized bed that made Sasha feel sick to look at. But she wasn't here to torture herself. She was here to gather evidence and to send a message. She took photos of everything, the apartment, the personal items, the romantic setup that Robert had created for his other life. Then she started packing. She packed all of Bella's clothes, her jewelry, her personal items. Everything that showed she had been living there. She left everything in boxes by the door with a note. Your things will be donated to charity if not collected within 24 hours. Sasha Johnson. Then she changed the locks. She called a locksmith that morning and he was waiting in the lobby when she came downstairs. Change every lock, she told him. The door, the windows, everything. While the locksmith worked, Sasha sat in the lobby watching people come and go. Several residents asked if she was the new tenant, and she told them the truth. She was Robert Johnson's wife, and she was cleaning up the mess he'd made. By the time she finished at the apartment, it was late afternoon. She drove home to find Robert's car in the driveway and Robert himself sitting on the front steps, looking defeated. Sasha, please, we need to talk. We talked last night. There's nothing left to say. I lost my job. I know. I'm the one who reported you. Bella won't return my calls. I'm not surprised. Con artists don't stick around when the money runs out. Robert stood up, blocking her path to the front door. Please, can we go inside? Can we try to work this out? Move, Robert. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can start over. Move, Sasha repeated, but Robert didn't budge. I love you, Sasha. I made terrible choices, but I love you. You love me? Sasha laughed, and the sound was bitter. You spent our entire savings on another woman. You lived with her for 2 years. You bought her an engagement ring worth more than our entire wedding. That's not love, Robert. That's selfishness. I was confused. I made mistakes. But it's over with her now. It's over with me too. It doesn't have to be. We can start fresh, rebuild what we had. What we had was built on lies. You can't rebuild a foundation that was never real. Robert stepped aside, finally letting her pass. Sasha, please. Don't throw away 3 years of marriage. I'm not throwing it away. You already did that. She unlocked the front door and went inside, leaving Robert standing on the steps. Through the window, she watched him get in his car and drive away, probably going to the apartment that he could no longer access, to see the woman who no longer wanted him. That evening, Sasha's phone rang. It was Patricia. Sasha, I just heard about Robert's job. What did you do? I told the truth about his misconduct. Why are you calling me instead of your son? Because he's not answering his phone. He's not at home, he's not at that apartment, and that girl won't talk to him. Harold is worried sick. Harold should have thought about that before he helped Robert deceive me. Sasha, please. I know you're angry, but Robert is family. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? For 2 years of lies? For stealing our money to support another woman? For planning to divorce me while pretending to be a loving husband? No, Patricia. I can't forgive that. What about the good times? What about everything you built together? Everything we built was fake. Every good time was shadowed by his lies. Every moment of happiness I felt was based on deception. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't tell you the truth. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry that your son turned out to be the kind of man who could do this to someone who loved him. After hanging up, Sasha poured herself a glass of wine and sat in her living room, looking at the photos on the mantelpiece. Photos of their wedding, their honeymoon, their anniversaries. 3 years of memories that now felt like lies. But she didn't feel sad anymore. She felt free. Free from the lies, free from the deception, free from a marriage that had been over for 2 years without her knowing it. Tomorrow she would start rebuilding her life. But tonight she was going to celebrate the end of the worst chapter she'd ever lived through. 6 months later, Sasha stood in the conference room of her new marketing firm, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The morning sun cast long shadows across the room where she'd just finished presenting her biggest client proposal yet. Incredible work as always, said Janet, who had left her old company to become Sasha's business partner. I think we've got another big win here. Sasha smiled, straightening her navy blue blazer. She'd built this company from the ground up using the settlement money from her divorce and her own fierce determination to prove that Robert hadn't broken her. If anything, his betrayal had revealed a strength she didn't know she possessed. The Richardson Group is going to love this campaign, agreed Marcus, her lead designer. The way you've positioned their brand transformation is brilliant. Team effort, Sasha said, but she felt a surge of pride. 6 months ago, she'd been a woman whose husband was planning to leave her for another woman. Now she was the owner of one of the city's fastest-growing marketing firms, with 12 employees and a client list that kept expanding. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, the architect she'd been dating for 3 months. Still on for dinner tonight? I made reservations at that new place downtown. She smiled and texted back, looking forward to it. David was everything Robert hadn't been, honest, straightforward, and completely uninterested in playing games. When he said he'd call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. When he said he cared about her, she believed him because his actions matched his words. Sasha? Janet interrupted her thoughts. Are you ready for the Henderson meeting? Absolutely. As they walked to the next conference room, Sasha reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. The divorce had been finalized 4 months ago, with Robert forced to pay back every penny he'd stolen from their joint account. The judge had not been sympathetic to his claims that he'd been confused about his feelings. Robert had lost everything. His job, his reputation, his money, and eventually Bella. Just as Sasha had predicted, Bella had disappeared the moment Robert's financial support ended. She'd cleaned out the apartment and vanished, leaving behind only a note saying she needed space to think. According to Emma, who had reached out to Sasha after the divorce was finalized, Robert was working at a much smaller firm for half his previous salary. He'd moved back in with his parents temporarily, and Patricia had mentioned that he seemed lost, and kept asking if Sasha had ever mentioned missing him. She didn't miss him. Not the real Robert, anyway. Sometimes she missed the man she'd thought he was, the husband she'd believed she had. But that man had never really existed. The Henderson meeting went well, landing them another major account. As Sasha shook hands with the clients, she caught her reflection in the conference room window. She looked different than she had 6 months ago, stronger, more confident, more alive. The scared, betrayed woman who had discovered her husband's affair was gone, replaced by someone who knew exactly what she was worth. After work, she drove to David's apartment in the historic district. He'd been cooking dinner for her once a week since they'd started dating, claiming it was his way of impressing her without having to compete with expensive restaurants. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing her hello. He always asked about her work with genuine interest, and he listened to her answers without checking his phone or looking distracted. "Good. Really good. We landed the Henderson account. The big retail chain? That's fantastic." David's enthusiasm was genuine, not the polite interest Robert had always shown. "I'm proud of you." Over dinner, David told her about the sustainable housing project he was designing, his eyes lighting up as he described his vision for environmentally friendly urban development. He was passionate about his work in a way that made Sasha remember why she'd fallen in love with marketing in the first place. "I have something to tell you," he said as they finished their wine. Sasha's stomach tightened slightly. Even after 6 months, unexpected announcements still made her nervous. "My firm is sending me to Portland for a month to oversee a project there." "When?" "Next week." "I know it's terrible timing with us just getting comfortable with each other." "It's okay," Sasha said, and she meant it. "Your work is important to you. I understand that. Would you consider visiting me there? Maybe for a long weekend?" "I'd like that." David reached across the table and took her hand. "I know you're still healing from what happened with your ex-husband. I know you need time to trust again. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not Robert." "I know you're not," Sasha said, squeezing his hand. "That's why I'm here." Later that evening, as Sasha drove home to her new apartment, a modern space downtown that was entirely hers, she thought about how different her life was now. She had work she loved, friends who supported her, and a man who treated her with respect and honesty. Her phone rang as she was getting ready for bed. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer it. "Hello? Sasha? It's Robert." She almost hung up immediately, but curiosity kept her on the line. "What do you want?" "I wanted to apologize. I know it's too late, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say I'm sorry." "Okay. You've said it. I also wanted you to know that you were right. About Bella. She was using me. The police contacted me last month. She's been arrested again for running the same scam on some other guy. I'm not surprised. I lost everything, Sasha. My job, my reputation, my money. And I lost you, which was the worst part. You lost me 2 years ago when you decided to lie to me instead of being honest about what you wanted. I know I messed up everything. But I keep thinking, is there any chance we could try again? Could we start over?" Sasha looked around her apartment, at the life she'd built for herself, at the photos from her business launch party and her recent trip to Europe with Janet. She thought about David, about the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the world, about the way he supported her dreams instead of stealing from them. "No, Robert. There's no chance. Sasha, please. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I'm not the woman who would stay with a man who lied to her for 2 years. I'm not someone who settles for being second choice. You were never second choice." "Yes, I was. And I'm not anyone's second choice anymore." She hung up and blocked his number immediately. Then she poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her balcony, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, "Missing you already. Can't wait to show you Portland." She smiled and texted back, "Can't wait to see it with you." 6 months ago, she'd been living a lie without knowing it. Now she was living a truth she'd created for herself. She had work that challenged her, friends who valued her, and a man who saw her for who she really was. Robert had thought he was trading up when he chose Bella over her. But he'd been wrong. He'd given up a woman who would have loved him forever for a woman who was only interested in what he could give her. Now Sasha was with a man who loved her not for what she could do for him, but for who she was. A man who celebrated her successes instead of stealing from them. A man who told her the truth, even when it was inconvenient. She thought Robert's betrayal had destroyed her life. Instead, it had revealed that the life she'd been living wasn't really hers at all. It had forced her to build something new, something better, something that belonged entirely to her. As she finished her wine and went inside to bed, Sasha realized that she was grateful. Not grateful for the pain Robert had caused her, but grateful for the strength it had revealed. Grateful for the opportunity to discover who she really was when everything else was stripped away. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined. She was more successful than she'd ever dreamed. And she was happier than she'd ever been, even during the best days of her marriage. Robert had given her the greatest gift of all, even though he'd never meant to. He'd shown her that she didn't need him or anyone like him to have a beautiful life. She'd built that life herself, and it was more amazing than anything she could have imagined 6 months ago. As she drifted off to sleep, Sasha smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. And she would meet them all as the strong, independent, successful woman she'd become. The woman who had risen from the ashes of Robert's betrayal and built something magnificent from the ruins.